Hello everyone and welcome to our last video of the semester. It's been a great semester. I've enjoyed having you, enjoyed reading your thought papers, and hopefully teaching you a little bit about the issues affecting online journalism. Before we get to this week's thought papers, I have a couple of housekeeping matters that I want to take care of. First off, if you have any rough drafts left of your final project, please hand those in by the end of the day today. I think I said Tuesday initially, but I've been traveling, I've been on the road, haven't had a chance to look at them, so I'm going to give you another day. All right, I will be back tomorrow to finish things up and make sure I get comments back for you on your rough drafts. Second, if you have any more thought papers or discussion board posts to make up, those all need to be done by Friday. Okay, I want to take care of those grades on Friday. And then finally, as I mentioned last week in the video, if you turn in everything for your final wiki by 9 a.m. on Monday, you will not be counted late. I'm going to work on grading those first thing on Monday so I can have grades to turn in by Wednesday at noon. So in thinking about last week's thought papers and discussion, there are a couple of key issues that came up. First, with the discussion, I was surprised that a lot of you picked to talk about the philosophical elements of journalism rather than the practical ones. I wonder why that is. Is it because that the practical issue of journalism is so messed up right now that we need a lot of people to talk about what it should be and what it should look like? If that's the case, then I'm glad that you guys addressed that, because once you get into the industry and working, I think you can really make a difference. Second, examine the concept of net neutrality, especially as it's been talked about in the news. I think a few of you didn't quite get what it means. It doesn't mean restricting access to the internet per se. What it does mean, though, is creating fast lanes for certain companies who are willing to pay more. And finally, a lot of you had some really great and supportive notions of citizen journalism. And I think that was a great thing. As you know, I'm a big proponent of citizen journalism. In the challenges between the practical side and the theoretical side, I want you to consider citizen journalism. A lot of how we talked about it in this class was from a theoretical standpoint, how it can be good. I think this is the first week that we really looked at some of the problems of it, some of the reports that are saying things that aren't true. This is where journalists really need to step in and ensure that our audience is really working for us, not against us. And I'm glad you internalized some of those concepts, but I encourage you to even take them a little bit further. Now, in looking at your thought papers and some quotes from them, I wanted to stress some of the really interesting ideas that you had, that you gained from the readings about technology. Is technology going to take over? Are we going to see news-generating robots? Actually, one of you talked about that in the discussion board, and I thought that was a really interesting and compelling post. The first quote I want to highlight from this section about technology is this one, that looks at the whole rather than just the sum of its parts. The internet might make it more challenging for us to read long books or think deeply, but it enables us to learn about more things and do so quickly and efficiently. I believe that over time, studies will show that these lighter connections will eventually lead to a larger and better rounded knowledge base. Second, this quote harkens back to later readings about the power of technology and who really is in control. Is it us or is it the technology? Despite changes, people will adjust, just as humans have always adjusted to changes in technology. The end result is that we shape our tools, and in turn, our tools shape us. As Turkle states, the key is for us to remember that we are the ones who decide how technology will be used, and not the other way around. I think that's one of Turkle's key contributions to the literature on this, the concept that we are in control of technology. And she really advocates for that, especially in the humane use of technology. The final quote actually talks about Turkle as well. According to Turkle, the realness of technology does not so much depend on the technology itself, but rather the people using it. In relation to the media and technology, I believe that this means that to an extent, people are entirely responsible for how much or how little they depend on technology. But what does the implications of technology and the challenges of using it mean for the news? This first quote encourages journalists to remember that people are people. Whether people become too dependent on reading and sharing news on their tablets or conversing on the web instead of in person, people at their core are still people and share the need to connect and converse. No matter the medium, people will still talk about the news and use technology to advance the center of human existence. I like that optimistic view, and I tend to agree. And that's one thing to remember as we get caught up in technology. Technology should enable people, not replace people. This second quote I thought was important because it addresses how technology is taken over and what the power ultimately of that technology can be. And I think this quote looks at it from an optimistic point as well. The amount of range that goes on throughout Twitter and Facebook really is incredible. Where one person sees it solely as a way to promote their band, another uses it to try and free one of their family members from a wrongful sentence. And as we think about people and how they use technology, think about that range as well. Finally, I like this quote because it addresses what the ultimate challenge to technology is. Journalists always want their reporting informative, but just as the limited space on the newspaper, they have to condense the online content and winnow it for people to best digest it. Different from the time and space in print and broadcast journalism, now the new limitation is our cognitive capacity, and it seems like a more rigorous restraint on reporting. I thought this was a really effective metaphor for the challenges that we face in online news right now. So finally, a lot of you addressed this question. With the challenges that we've looked at for technology, is the internet then ultimately a good thing or a bad thing? And I think the best answers took a middle ground, like this one. During the semester, I feel like I've put my brain to a test. Is the net good or bad? And I've determined that it's good. It's the ultimate driver of technology, or the driving force of the future. I'm not saying there aren't bad parts about the internet with anything. The world learns to take the good with the bad. But I believe the internet is more good than bad. This next quote really puts the burden of finding whether the internet is good and bad on the audience, just as McKinnon does. As McKinnon says, we are all netizens, interacting with one another, living during this amazing technologically savvy era. We need to find the good with the bad, the usefulness of the internet with the frustrations of it, and there's no better time to start than now. All right, well that's it again for this week in the class. Thanks for all your hard work. If you have any questions, or if you're on campus next semester and want us to come by my office, I'm at 212 Schoonover. My email, as always, is meyerh@ohio.edu. Thanks and have a great rest of the summer.